Hey guys, Darth Bob here with another episode of Darth Bob Reviews. It's been a while since I did my last video. I think the last one I put out on YouTube was about 5 years ago, and a lot has changed in my life, but I've not been completely idle in the hobby, so I wanted to do another review today, this time featuring the AUS30K 2020 event model Kickstarter. So to give you guys a little bit of a background, for those who don't know what AUS30K is, it's kind of a mix of two things. First, it's a fan project made for and by the community that has a website where users can document battle reports, their fluff, their armies, all sorts of stuff set in this fictional system called the Australis Ultima system, set in the Ultramar sector. And it's a kind of fan fiction slash homebrew setting where people can just kind of share their hobby, their Warhammer experience. And then second of all, it's also an Australian-based line of miniatures by a company called Tagged Events, who produce third-party miniatures based on the Warhammer 40,000 setting. They've done models like Unarmored Space Marines, where they're just shirtless and pantless, and they've got the like black carapace ports all over their body. They come in both normal Space Marine size and Primaris size. They have a cool Tech Priest model. They have a really cool Knight Errant model. They did some models based on the Sloughs, which are like the weird maggot people that were featured in the Fantasy Flight Games RPG for Warhammer 40,000. But this particular Kickstarter was for a model meant to be for the 2020 tabletop game convention circuit of a rogue trader. And unfortunately, the convention never happened, or any of the conventions never happened because of the COVID-19 situation. But the Kickstarter did go through and had a bunch of really cool stretch models, or stretch goal models, including some really cool models based on the Enslavers, taking inspiration from the sketch done by Goodwin many years ago. And so I just wanted to do a video today to kind of showcase the Kickstarter and give you guys an idea of the model quality coming out of AUS30K. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's jump in and take a look at the models. So first of all, this is the feature model of the Kickstarter. This is Gabrielle Calathetos. She's a rogue trader model. All the models that were in this Kickstarter were cast in resin, and they're very nice quality. So I really like this model. She's got a kind of cool helmet. There was a Kickstarter exclusive version where she was wearing the helmet and kind of had her sword pointed out, and she looked like she was in a charging pose. I elected to get the one without the helmet because I prefer my character models to have their bare heads showing. I really like this model because one thing I do find with a lot of third-party Warhammer miniatures that feature women is that they tend to be very sexualized. You'll see a lot of like female commissar models that have their midriffs exposed, or they have a lot of cleavage. And while I think there's maybe a place for that, and some people might find that appealing, I prefer my military commander women to look like military commanders, and this model really just oozes character and oozes powerful leadership. So this model will be great as like a guard proxy. You could use her as a rogue trader, maybe an inquisitor. It's a very cool model. I originally pledged this Kickstarter specifically for the Enslavers, which you may see in the background, and I was kind of contemplating even not getting this model, but I'm really glad I did because it's a really great, really characterful model. So that's her. And then next up we got the Enslaver, which comes in 4 parts. So this is the main body. As you can see, it's got really nice dimpled texture. There's a line of spines going down the back. There's some almost Tyranid-esque carapace on the front of the body. It's kind of almost shaped like a jellyfish. It's got some flash on it, but we'll get to that later. And then the other pieces. It's got these tentacle clusters, which just snap in here into the side of the model. Here's the other one. It's not really any different, slightly different pose. It just snaps in like that. They stay in pretty well, even without any glue. So that's kind of the basic silhouette. And then the fourth piece is the head, or I guess the head slash front body slash little dinky arms. Got these little claws, little pincers. And that just kind of fits onto the front right here. Something like, oops, something like that. The Enslaver models are very cool. This was the main reason I pledged to the Kickstarter. They were always kind of one of those obscure Xenos races that I found really fascinating. And I always loved that piece of Jess Goodwin artwork, which I'll put a link to in the description for those who aren't familiar with what I'm talking about. But when I saw that they did models based on that art, I knew I had to pledge to the Kickstarter. So they're very, very cool models. And then the other thing they did to go along with the Enslavers were these really cool portals. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the lore of the Enslavers, the basic idea is that they're these extra-dimensional Xenos, so they live in the warp, but they're not demons. At least as far as we know, it's kind of one of the obscure mysteries is exactly what the Enslavers are. Kind of just adds flavor to their background. But what we do know is they use psychers as a means to enter the Materium by turning psychers into living portals. There's never really been, as far as I know, vivid description of how exactly they do this, but AUS30K decided that it would be this kind of creepy body horror stuff, almost like Dead Space. And so they've got these bodies, and then there's a portal that goes on top. So these are the model's arms, and there's his head at the top, so he's ripped his own head off, and his arms have all extended and malformed and mutated. I'll actually take him off this base so you can get the full image. And so you got the body of the guy down here, so he's kneeling down, he's got his rib cage all ripped open, his back has started to mutate, and then his arms extended up. He's kind of turned into this living kind of portal that the Enslavers can then use to enter the Materium. And then when they enter the Materium, they'll transform the human populace into mindless slaves and eat their souls and do all sorts of horrific stuff. I believe in the lore it said that, if enslavers get out of control in a world, the only solution is exterminatus. But they did 3 variants of these enslaver portals. So that last one I showed you was the male variant, so it's a male body. And then the second one here is a female body. The portal part is the same on all 3, but the body portion is different. So that's the female version. And then they did a Space Marine, which is scaled to around the size of a Primaris model. And I'm really impressed with how the power armor itself looks. It's very accurate to the style of Warhammer power armor. The only really glaring difference is the backpack, which could easily be snapped off and put an official backpack on, but very, very cool. I'm actually kind of disappointed because in the Kickstarter I ended up getting 2 of the male bodies, 2 of the female bodies, but I only got 1 of the Space Marines because I wasn't sure if I was going to like the style of the power armor. I do, and I really wish I would have gotten 2. But the other kind of cool thing the portals come with is this Enslaver Torso. So this is basically the front half of the Enslaver. And the idea is you can take these pieces and put them together, And then if you look here, it's got kind of this swirl texture on the back, and it can then fit onto the front of the portal. It's going to probably be a little hard for me to show it to you, but and the idea is it can kind of look like the Enslaver's slipping through the portal, and then you would just put that on top of one of the bodies like that. Then it would just add a little bit of extra character. It's always nice to have options, I think, for your models, and this definitely does that. So the Kickstarter also came with this cool coin. It's like a collector's coin, and it features the logo of the AUS30K Australis Ultima setting, and then this is supposed to be, I think, Gabrielle's helmet with a little Aquila and some cool kind of Greek etching along the edge. All the models come with these rule cards. So on one side, it's got like the rules for like Horus Heresy or pre 8th or 9th edition 40K, and then on the other side, it's got rules that you could use for 9th edition or 8th edition. And then Gabrielle and the Enslavers came with their own individual cards, which have little lore blurbs and some art. That's her right there, that's Gabrielle. And that's their artistic interpretation of the Enslavers. It's pretty cool. And then last but not least, the Kickstarter also came with a free set of trading cards, which you might see back here. Just a kind of a booster pack. And these are basically just art cards, and they have pieces of fan art from a variety of different, some fairly well-known Warhammer fan artists, and then they got little lore blurbs about the characters and stuff. And I was going to open them on camera, but I think I might save that for a different video because I don't want this video to get too long. But without further ado, what do I think about the models themselves, or the Kickstarter overall? Well, I think the Kickstarter is great, and I think the models are very inspired. They're very, very cool. There's really nothing else quite like them on the market. If I had to bring up one complaint with it, it would be, however, that there are some pretty glaring casting issues, specifically on the Enslaver models. So Gabrielle is fine. She doesn't really have any issues, save a small piece of flash on her sword. Let me get that to focus. So you can see she's got a small piece of flash on her sword. That's easily fixable. These guys have absolutely no flashing issues, or other than some mold release, there's really no casting issues at all on the portals. The Enslavers, however, are a different story. So here's another body of one of the Enslavers I got. And as you can see, this one has a massive mold slip on the body. There's a huge resin bubble here. I got in contact with Andrew from AUS30K. Really, really cool guy. He got back to me, I think literally within 15 minutes of me sending him an email about this particular body, and was like, "Oh yeah, it's no problem. I'll send out one to you as soon as possible." And then the other thing is, a lot of the arms on these little head portions snapped off. I think half of them, not half of the models, but half of the arms were just broken off, and I had to re-glue like pretty much all of them. That's why the arm position on this one is a little different than the last one you saw. That one was one of the ones that actually wasn't broken. This is kind of understandable though, because it's a very fiddly small piece, just kind of very fragile. But the main casting issue I find is with the tentacles. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of kind of resin gunk in between the tentacles. There's lots of pretty glaring mold slips, like right in there. Along the tentacle, there's some pretty significant mold slips here. This piece probably has the worst of the worst, with that huge piece of resin right in here. The tentacles are very fragile, and that would be very difficult to clean up without breaking stuff. In fact, if you look on this tentacle, it looks like it may have already broken, and either the master piece that they cast for the mold had to be glued back together, or maybe Andrew or somebody there glued the tentacles back together. Either way, it's appreciated, but it is, like, I would have to do a little bit of modeling to smooth that out, because it does look very much like it was broken off and glued back on. Yeah, there's that mold slip up there. A little disappointing with the tentacles. And the other issue I find that they have is, if I put them together, which I should also mention, these models all came with bases. So I'll take one of the 40s it came with, which I think is a little small for these. Personally, I think I'd actually put them, I have some on hand, I put them on a 50mm base, or maybe even 60mm base. But anyway you slice it, if you look at how they sit on the base, it's just these very, very tiny connection points on the tentacles. And I just feel like that's going to be extremely fragile and very easy to snap right off the base. So my solution, I think, in lieu of the really ridiculously careful cutting it will require to get the flashing and the mold slips and all the stuff off the tentacles, is rather than going through all that work, I think I'm actually just going to cut the tentacles off, basically right where they meet these little cluster sections, and then I'm going to use this tool, Green Stuff World Tentacle Roller, and make my own tentacles. And I think that'll solve most of the problems I have with this kit, which is just that the tentacles are kind of poorly cast. Sorry, I just got a message on Discord. The tentacles are kind of poorly cast. They're very fragile. If I'm able to make my own tentacles, I can also pose them differently. They'll have a wire base, so they'll be more sturdy, and I won't have to worry about cleaning them up. So this isn't kind of meant to deter you from buying the models. It's just kind of to let you know, in case you're thinking about getting them, that if you get ones like I did, which this is not just one pair of tentacles, like this body was like kind of unique in how many casting issues there were. Pretty much all the tentacles are like this, and I suspect, unless there's a radical change in the way they cast them, they'll probably all be like this, and it will require a significant amount of cleaning. I think maybe a little bit beyond what most people would expect in a resin kit. So just so you're aware, you will have to do some cleanup with these models. But I think they'll be absolutely worth it because they're gorgeous models. And just because you didn't really get a full size comparison, that's about... And she's like maybe a little bit taller than a normal guardsman. Kind of a standard 28mm scale, so that's about how big they are. I'll also grab a Termagant model that I've got over here. Unfortunately, I don't have any Space Marines, which are this kind of standard comparison, so if I put it at level with the base. So it's about the size. And so yeah, that's overall my review. A couple casting issues aside, which can be remedied with some very patient work on the model itself, or if you're like me and you're a masochist, you can custom sculpt a bunch of stuff. It's really not that big a deal, and I definitely recommend checking AUS30K out. I'll put a link in the description below to their store where you can purchase all the models you saw in this video. I also recommend checking out their other Kickstarters. I think at the moment, I'm not sure if it's still up, but you maybe still be able to late pledge to their Terminator Kickstarter, which features Terminators based on the old Rogue Trader versions, which are like the Saturnine pattern Terminators with the beetle backs. I pledged to that, and I'm really excited to get them. And I think right now their next Kickstarter they're working on is going to be some Thunder Warrior models. So that should be very cool as well. But anyways, guys, really appreciate you watching this video. I'm hoping to be more consistent about posting videos on YouTube from now on. If you'd like to see more, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also check out my hobby stuff and all my other Warhammer 40,000 ramblings on Instagram. That's at Darth Bob Miniatures. I'm also going to put a link in the description for that. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking a look. I hope everybody's doing okay and being safe out there with the COVID-19 situation. I know it's been hard for a lot of people. It has been for me and my wife, so I just want to wish you all the best of luck and hope you're all safe and healthy. So, thanks guys for tuning in. This is Darth Bob, signing off.